السلام عليكم.
Apologies, everyone, but we are waiting for a few speakers to join us. And they are joining in now.
So while we wait, and Dr. Brady, just to keep things going, where's everyone calling in from today? Greetings from Colorado, USA.
Oh. Greetings from Adelaide, South Australia.
And from Budapest. It's strange. I was born in Colorado very, very many years ago. So it's been a long time.
Whereabouts, sir?
Denver.
Okay. My partner and I just moved here a few months ago. So
how is it?
So
beautiful, is it not?
Lovely. It's very hot, but it is this is a gorgeous part of the world. The mountains are just ever present.
Well, greetings from Ras Al Khaimah, UAE.
Nasser from Geneva, Switzerland.
Wow.
Well, I'm joining from my summer house in Bodrum.
Very
Hassan
nice.
joining from Cairo, Egypt.
In Washington,
For
D.C.
some reason, it's very difficult for me to hear what everyone is saying.
Ah.
Ladies and gentlemen, greetings to you all. On behalf of Dr. Mohammed Al Ali, CEO of Trans Research and Advisory, I welcome you all to the roundtable, which deals with one of the important topics related to think tanks under the title, The Role of Think Tanks in the Shaping of Policies, Strategies for Translating Research into Practice. This event coincides with the celebration of the 8th anniversary of Trans Research and Advisory, which was founded by the 9th of September 2014 as an independent think tank that seeks to provide a better understanding and deeper and more accurate analysis of various regional and international issues. Allow me to invite His Excellency, Dr. Mohammed Abdallah Al Ali, CEO of Trans Research and Advisory, to deliver the opening remarks of this roundtable. Dr. Mohammed Al Ali, تفضل.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
السيدات
Ladies and gentlemen, the chairmen and CEOs of think tanks and who are participating in this roundtable, peace be upon you again. I am pleased, first of all, to welcome you all and thank you for your visiting us to participate in this roundtable for the think tanks in its third round, which is from the trends to gather the think tanks and research and studies that are effective around the world. And in line with its vision that is based on the importance of opening these tanks and the discussion of the topics to reach the visions and constructive participation to serve the humanity, this meeting that we are honored by Trends to host yearly as a platform for international to coordinate research and studies to study and see the foresights for the different issues that face our countries and the world in general. And what is more important is that this annual meeting has a good welcome every year, which encourages us a lot to go forward and continue this good experiment and boost it. At the topic level, this forum discussed through the past 2 years important topics and had recommendations and thoughts that confirmed clearly that research cooperation is one of the best ways to achieve the targets that we look for. The first roundtable that discussed in 2020 how to discuss the cooperation between the think tanks and their role in the problems concentrating on COVID-19. The second roundtable in 2021 under the table, the think tanks from the foresight to participating for the purpose of boosting the role of think tanks to make the future which all the people look forward to, and in believing the importance in the importance of think tanks and the research methods, and realizing the importance of the best benefit from research from these products, we have chosen this year to hold our third roundtable under that table, the role of the think tanks to draft these policies to change the research into practice, and how these are represented by the think tanks and can be executed on the ground so that the countries and the communities will benefit. The duty of the think tanks is not to produce things and present envisages and outlooks, effective and innovative things, and challenge face the challenges, but the most important thing is to reach these these ideas to the targeted people, either for raising awareness or for the decision makers to make the policies that realize the objectives of the people for development and well-being, and know that these challenges will make the leaders that there's no important thing than doing this role and distinctive in knowledge and policy making. Ladies and gentlemen, my colleagues, we are in a trends for research and advisory. We are so confident that this constellation of researchers that are participating are able to have policies that draw the future for the works of this session, because it deals with the role of research. Allow me to thank you again for your participation, effective participation, for the works of this roundtable, and we are looking forward to more than research cooperation in the future, and peace be upon you. نشكر سعادة السيد محمد عدلي
Advisory for his remarks that paved the way for the topic and highlight some important points that can be discussed in this roundtable. which is also an extension of a series of symposia that dealt with the role of think tanks in policymaking and support for decision makers. That is why this roundtable is especially important. First, by virtue of the topic it's dealing with, and second, because it comes amidst an opening discussion about the need to activate the role of think tanks in shaping strategies and policy making, especially since there are many centers that focus or care about theorizing away from reality. Although think tanks are supposed to work not only to develop perceptions about policies or provide sober analysis, but also propose practical solutions in scientific and systematic ways that help decision makers make and shape the necessary policies, and most importantly, deal with or solve the problems facing them. Indeed, this is the reason why think tanks are founded in the first place, and it is perhaps their most important goal. This, of course, will be the focus of this meeting, where we expect to focus not only on the theoretical dimensions, important as they are, but also on the means, steps, or ideas that contribute to activating the role of think tanks to fulfill their main task of serving and supporting policy and decision makers and implement those policies or strategies and turn them into reality on the ground. In this context, the roundtable will address the following main themes. First one being furthering the role and importance in public policy making, increasing the value and contribution to addressing national, regional, and global issues, enhancing the relevance and effectiveness towards policies in times of unpredictable crisis, meeting the challenges and delivering solutions amid threats facing the world, and finally, optimizing the potential for creative thinking and policy innovation. Before we start the discussion, allow me to provide you with some participation guidelines. The first being that participants may choose to speak or comment on any of the 5 themes mentioned. Second, participants who would like to speak can raise their hand by clicking on the raised hand button at the bottom of the screen. And lastly, we expect participants to kindly speak for 2 to 3 minutes maximum, so we can also give the chance for other participants to speak. Welcome to all of our distinguished experts here today. And also I would like to introduce briefly each and every one of the experts joining us today. We have today from the Federal Republic of Germany, Dr. Engineer Hassan Abu Naga, who is the Vice Chair of the Middle East Water Forum, and also Dr. Iyad Ad-Dajani, who is an Executive and Research Director of the Academic Alliance for Reconciliation, the Friedrich Schiller University, Jena. We have from the UAE, Mr. Abaid Al-Zaabi, who is a researcher in the Emirates Center for Strategic Studies and Research, Dr. Anna Dolids, Associate Professor and Lead Researcher in Policing and Security from Rabdan Academy. We have Dr. Jessica Malouch, Director of Strategy, Research and Impact, Sheikh Saoud bin Saqr Al-Qasimi Foundation for Policy Research. We have, and I'm really happy to say this, Dr. John Bruni. He's here with us for the 3rd time. This is our 3rd annual roundtable, and he's here. It's a true honor. Dr. John Bruni, he is a founder and chief executive officer of SAGE International, all the way from Australia. We have from the Republic of Turkey, Professor Dr. Ahmed Evin from Sabancı University. He's a senior scholar of Istanbul Policy Center. We have from the Republic of Peru, she's not here yet with us, but she will be joining us shortly, Ms. Elaine Ford, who is the director and founder of DAD International Democracia Digital. We have from the Republic of Azerbaijan, Ms. Narmina Gasimova, Grants and Programs Director of the Center of Economic and Social Development. We have also from the State of Israel, Professor Ephraim Imbar. He's the president of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. Dr. Eli Saltzman, board member of METIVIM, the Israeli Institute for Regional Foreign Policies. We have also from Hungary, Professor Jeffrey Kaplan, who is a distinguished fellow from Danube Institute. And from the USA, we have Mr. Saddam Sarjahan. He is the CEO of International Youth Council Headquarters. We have Mr. Raymond Karam. He's the Chief Program and Development Officer from the Arab Gulf States Institute in Washington. We have Dr. Paul McAllister, who is a dear friend also of Trans Research and Advisory. He's the founder and president of Global Leaders in Unity and Involvement. Mr. Daniel Porras, Director of Strategic Partnerships and Communications from Secure World Foundation. Also from the Oriental Republic of Uruguay, we have Mr. Daniel Superville, Director and Strategic Communications from the Center for the Study of Economic and Social Affairs. The Republic of Austria, we have Ms. Velina Chakarova. She's the Director of Austrian Institute for European and Security Policy. And from the Kingdom of Morocco, we have Mr. Akram Zawi, Head of the Public Policy Lab, Policy Center for the New South. And finally, from the Swiss Confederation, we have Mr. Nasser Zaher, Head of the Department for International Relations and Political Economy, Geneva Center for Studies. I welcome you all, and I'm happy and glad. And I'm sure Dr. Mohammed Lali as well is really happy with this selection of amazing and distinguished experts here with us today. So we can now begin the discussion. As I have mentioned before, we have 5 themes, starting with how think tanks further the role and importance in public policy making. The second, having think tanks increase and value the contribution to addressing national, regional, and global issues, enhancing the relevance and effectiveness towards policies in times of unpredictable crisis, meeting the challenges and delivering solutions amid threats facing the world, and finally, optimizing the potential for creative thinking and policy innovation. Anyone who would like to comment could, as I mentioned before, click on the raise hand button below the screen, and I would give the chance for 2-3 minutes, and then we can move on to another participant. Okay, I can see Dr. Engineer Hassan Abu Naga. We can start with you, Doctor. You can speak.
Yeah, thanks so much, Trindis and Dr. Muhammad Ali, for inviting us to this really great panel and this important topic. I would like to start, that in relation, to Sustainable Development Goals, which is the UN agenda for 2030, the 2030 agenda for all countries, that we are today off track to almost all water and food related sustainable development goals, which are really important and interconnected with all sustainable development goals. So this calls us for a new paradigm, that we are off track, so we need a new paradigm. And here the role of think tanks plays a great role in order to change the way that we used to do in terms of managing the resources, developing our policies, and also the way we collaborate with each other. So I think the role of the think tanks comes in a time that we are really facing crisis from water and climate extremes such as floods and droughts. And we have been all facing all this crisis. So it is not only for developing countries or in the Middle East, which is the most water scarce region in the world, but all countries, as we have seen recently in Europe from droughts. So I think when it comes to the importance of think tanks is really to do mainly 5 I's, I could say. First is mainly about the integration and between all stakeholders, and also integration of policies and strategies when it comes to critical resources and the hazards and risks in institutions, and the role of them in order to also to reform themselves in order to develop really a sustainable solutions to their communities. 3, the role of think tanks when it comes to information and the role of digital transformation nowadays. This could also play a great role in having knowledge portals, which could be supported by platforms like Trends, which can really inform decision making. The fourth about innovation, and innovation is not only about technology, innovation for new sources of finances, and also innovation for new partnerships. And the last one is about infrastructure and resilient infrastructures, which is mainly calling for a new type of infrastructures and based on nature-based solutions. And we are heading now, I'm currently in Cairo, in Egypt, heading to the COP27, which is really on climate change, giving the importance of climate issues, which impacts all our societies. So I stop here, and also we'll be welcoming to comment after the experts. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Hassan. If anyone would like to comment on, okay, I see Mr. Daniel Porras. Please go ahead, proceed.
Sure. Thank you. And thank you also, Dr. Hassan, for those 5 eyes. It's actually something that our institution should probably stick on a board somewhere and keep an eye on. I suppose since this is the first time I'll take the floor, I'll say thank you very much to Trends for having us here, and thank you everyone for being here. I'll introduce our organization and a little bit of what we do. Secure World Foundation is a US-based organization that specializes in space sustainability, more specifically the sustainability of human space activities. I'm formerly UN, and my particular line of work is actually in the prevention of an arms race in outer space. And think tanks, what are academics doing in the room when you have Russia, China, the United States, and India talking about whether or not they should blow up satellites? And one of the things that Secure World Foundation found is actually we have a huge role to play, particularly in the capacity of convener, and as being an objective party that brings folks together to be able to have conversations and dialogues that unfortunately sometimes can get very politically sensitive. So one of the things that we have found is that it's very important for us to try and make connections, not just across international communities. So I'm actually here because I'm scouting many of you and stalking you online to find out who else might help us to develop some international partnerships and connections, but also across other communities that are involved in outer space. These days, it's the commercial sector. So bringing the commercial actors, some of the really big companies to the table with diplomats and other governmental representatives has actually been one of the areas that we have found that has been extremely important in shaping policies that are fit for purpose today. Governments are actually a very small actor in outer space now, and without the input of private companies and private companies around the world, any policies that we come up for human space activities are going to fall short of the mark. So at least from our perspective, one of the really big roles that think tanks and academia have is to create threads across the world to draw the interests together and find where our very diverse interests converge. And then, of course, how we can find solutions to global problems that start by addressing those converging interests. Looking forward to hearing from the rest of you, and can't wait to hear about what you do.
Thank you so much, Mr. Daniel. Really interesting perspective, from the, space part, of think tanks. I can see Dr. Eli Saltzman would like to comment. Please go ahead. Dr. Eli, you're on mute.
My apologies. Thank you so much for having me. So I'm a board member with Mitvim that focuses on Israeli foreign policy. It's not as sexy as Daniel's space exploration and space security focus. So this is kind of a disadvantage for me. But I do want to tap into some of the things that he said. Mitvim is also a facilitator of a conversation that oftentimes cannot take place when just political actors are in the room. And I think that this is something that is very critical for all think tanks, regardless of what the focus is, the professional focus is. I think it's the ability to reinvent or to reimagine a space where people from opposite sides, from different political parties can come about and engage each other, try to find the common denominator rather than the separating elements. Given the fact that Mitvim is a progressive think tank, we are kind of pro-pigs, asking to innovate or pursuing the innovation of Israeli foreign policy, both regionally, internationally, and domestically. I think one of the challenges that we face is oftentimes, especially in the case of Israel, where we will have the fifth election, general elections in November 1st in 2 years. So that's pretty significant. So one of the challenges is, how do you find partners? How do you make the pitch? How do you sell your commodity, your knowledge, your experience, the insight, the innovation, if you wish? And that is something that we're grappling with quite a lot. But I think that overall, I think it's the ability, nevertheless, or the aspiration to try and identify potential actors. And that is people who are either currently in positions of power or influence, or those who will occupy these positions in the future. And so there's kind of a future telling kind of a nature to our work. We're trying to spread as much as we can our messages and our content, and our advice and professionalism, if you wish, but at the same time, try to keep the general trajectory that is aligned with the mission statement of the organization of this institute. So I think that balancing these two elements, trying to remain faithful to your goal, to your mission, and at the same time open avenues, new avenues with new stakeholders, with new shareholders, is something that takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. And I think this is the main challenge that think tanks are facing, especially when the political situation changes and shifts so rapidly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Eli. I totally agree with what you have said, especially now, the world is getting more global, and as we do here in Trends, we usually, seek out other like international think tanks, build relations with them, explore different ways of maybe, conducting research or conferences, the exchanging of ideas and all of that. Okay, I can see Dr. John Bruni who raised his hand. So go ahead, Doctor.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank Trends Research and Advisory and Dr. Mohammed for having invited me again to this esteemed forum. Look, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news here, but I think I'm going to kick off with a couple of controversial points about think tanks, which feeds into the main points that we're going to be discussing. Firstly, there seems to be a lack of trust in think tanks and think tankers generally. I mean, if we take the American example, for instance, there was a study that suggested that only about 20% of Americans actually trust think tanks and what think tanks provide. There's also been a number of other particular studies suggesting that the fragmentation of the body politic, not just in the United States, but in other countries as well, seems to show that think tanks aren't working in a very coherent political space. As a matter of fact, some think tanks are becoming almost recruited as, dare I say, ideological warriors. Whoever happens to be the donor, you pledge your fealty to that donor, and then you tell the donor what they want to hear, as opposed to what policy prescriptions. And here, thinking like a traditional academic, we try to put a lot of emphasis on the idea of objectivity. Objectivity gets thrown out the window in many cases. This, I believe, is a problem. It's a problem for all of us. It's something that we will always have to struggle with to greater or lesser degrees. But I think the international political structure being such, it does not lend itself well. Now, my issue is, how do we as think tanks and think tankers working in an industry which is called the so-called marketplace of ideas. I hate that term. I'm not an economic rationalist. So, talking about marketplaces when it comes to really serious academic work, it's not on for me. But anyway, it is what it is. And this is the environment that we have to navigate our way through. How do we communicate what it is that we set out? Now, whether or not we're talking about space, and I'm really interested in space, by the way. So my colleague in Colorado, good on you. If you need a contact into Adelaide, we host the headquarters of Australian Space here in Adelaide. So let me know. But, having said that, whether it's space or whether it's the military, whether it's international relations, water, anything, you have to try to find that objective space in which we can all work and give our level best in terms of research and analysis to the policymakers on the fly. Now, you know, I'm not pessimistic, but I'm also not optimistic about our situation at the moment. But I'll open this up to everyone else to find out what everyone thinks about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bruni. It's always, you know, good to hear your side and of you know, your opinions and perspectives on things. And I'm glad that you have connected now on our roundtable with Daniel Porras. Maybe you could, you know, start something there. I would like to welcome Elaine Ford. She has just joined us. And I know that she is now in Bali, Indonesia, where she is attending the T20 summit. I believe, Ms. Elaine, that you are familiar with the themes of the topic today, or would you like me to, you know, would you like me to state them again to you?
Thank you, Alma. And good afternoon to you all. My greeting from Bali, Indonesia, where the T20 Think Tank Summit has been held. Within the framework of the G20, an interesting experience to dialogue, exchange knowledge, and above all, define together a common agenda, or at least prioritize the major needs to be addressed globally. I also thank Trends Research and Advisory for the invitation to the third Think Tank Roundtable. It is an honor for me to participate. I want to start by talking about the general title of this event, that is Strategies for Translating Research into Practice. I think it is very appropriate to reflect on this because it is really necessary for think tanks to take the step to action, especially those whose work is mainly oriented to research and academy. Of course, their contribution is valuable, but I think it would be more enriching and its impact would be greater for the extent that it can combine lines of research work with empirical work to collect evidence and to be the basis for the design of public policies. At Democracia Digital, the organization I founded and I direct from Lima, Peru, we have a line of research and publication that is becoming more robust. In addition, it is very important to contribute to the analysis and discussion on the issues of our specialty and from our local and regional perspective. However, despite being a small think tank, we have been able to design several lines of actions which are derived from our institutional mission. Our mission is to promote the responsible use of the internet and new digital technologies. In this sense, we have developed also the following lines. For example, we create training workshops and training through various educational activities focused on specific topics and aim in different audiences. We have created also the training school aimed at public officials, representatives of political parties, congressmen, advisors, and others, which provides academic certification in partnership with a university in Peru. We also promote a series of contests where we encourage good digital practices from 4 sectors: citizens, civil society, public sector, and private sector. All these good digital practices are consolidated in our digital democracy observatories, which systematize and geolocalize this information. We create also audiovisual material for education and awareness that is shared in social networks and allied media. We convene the technical community for the development of technological solutions based on the needs of the population and the current situation or global trends. We have held tech camps, challenges, and awards with this same intention to address specific issues. And of course, as I already said, we publish different policy brief papers and our set of publications that each time is getting more strength. So all this work, as I just mentioned, complements very well with the mission we have, which I already described. In this way, the impact we achieve and the way we can influence the public policies that are designed and the decision-making process will be more forceful, assertive, and proactive, because there are many channels that are active simultaneously and that invite to action, and that's what we want. No, and also there are other things that we must take in consideration. For example, the relevance of create alliances with other organizations, the networking and collaboration with other organizations helps a lot in this process. I must say also that other thing that help us, and I think it's important to mention this in this event, is that during the pandemic, despite the adversities and negative effects to our countries, this brought also many positive elements for our organization. First of all, we must first of all, the need to spend more time connected to carry out our daily life somehow force governments to promote greater access to the internet, especially in rural areas. For example, in Peru, for you to know, internet access in rural areas in March of 2020 was only 4%. A year later, it increased to 40%. And this reality repeated in many countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. So Democracia Digital had an opportunity to extend its work to Spanish-speaking countries in our region, seeking new partnerships to disseminate our work, activities, and projects. And we are in the process of strengthening our leadership in the topics we promote at the Latin American level. These are opportunities that present to us and that we had the possibility to take advantage in the best way. And I think this experience is important to share with you, and I hope it could be very useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Elaine. As usual, it's an honor to have you with us, and thank you for sharing the experience of the DAD think tank as well. I can see Mr. Akram. You can go ahead and comment.
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, I extend my heartfelt thanks to Trends for the invitation. Thank you for your organization. I'm really glad to be here. Maybe to build on what was previously said, I think maybe I will start by presenting our center. So we are the Policy Center for the New South. Is the leading center in both Morocco and the Maghreb region, the Arab Maghreb region, with a staff of 70 plus people and 40 plus fellows from Spain and France, the two main trade partners of Morocco, but also from Senegal, the friend country, Brazil, Ethiopia, and St. Lucia. We have two research departments. One of them is on economics, because our founder and executive president is a former member of the World Bank and a former chief economist at Bank of Morocco, but also in international relations. We have 7 research programs focusing on Morocco, but also on Africa with an interest in the MENA region and the wider Atlantic, so the Southern Atlantic in particular in relation to Latin America. Just to build on what was previously said, notably by Dr. John Bruni, I think it's important, although I'm not an economist myself, but it's quite important to present what we are doing in think tanks as an industry. And indeed, it is a debated one. It is an unknown one. It is more known in some places than in others. And sometimes it's actually a hated one. I remember having had a conversation with someone from Colombia who was attributing a lot of the evils happening in the world to think tanks and the influential she attributed to think tanks in the world. And I think when we are talking about an industry, it's quite important to define it. We are not academia per se, or properly speaking, our dynamics and our rationale are quite different from those of proper academic institutions, if I may call them this way. It's not the same temporality, it's not the same relationship to political decision-making and to policy design. It's not consultancy either, it's not advisory, because at the end of the day, the idea of the think tank is also to remain independent. Therefore, I would say, if I was to describe it, maybe a definition I could offer would be to say that think tanks are institutions that provide evidence-based policy solutions for the common good while trying to remain as independent as possible. And therefore, I would say that saying that about the industry, it's important to see that it has business models. So the business models can vary from one institution to another one, notably in terms of funding, for instance. It is an industry that has a history which is deeply connected to that of the United States, and therefore applying the model that was born in the United States to other spaces is subject to question. For example, I know that in France, the country I used to work in, the think tanks industry was actually struggling to become as important, as massive as it is in the United States, for instance. It is also an industry which has its competitors, which compete through innovation, which can specialize in different segments, whether I was mentioning economics, while one of your guests was mentioning space, but it can be even more precise than this in data and so on and so forth. And therefore, the different institutions also have competitive advantages. But I think an important component, because I was talking about competition, is also that of partnerships. And I think this event that was organized by your institution illustrates it quite well, in the sense that even in industries, innovation can circulate. And I think the idea of connection and circulation is very important to the industry. Innovation can circulate through joint ventures. And therefore, the partnerships are a way to disseminate good practices, are a way to share ideas, and are a way, of course, to build, to build connections and to build dynamics and to build groupings moving in a certain direction. Just to add something about this, another idea that was mentioned is that of creating something that is stable over time. Indeed, I think this idea of inertia, and maybe we'll come back to it later, is quite important in the sense political dynamics can vary, social media can lead the opinion to in that way or the other one. So it's quite important to have an expertise directed towards serving the common good and that maintains through time. And I think think tanks are precisely the kind of institutions who can be at the intersection of policies and research and give this sort of stability over time to reflect on long-range issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Akram. I think your comment was spot on. We can move now to Dr. Anna. It's on mute.
Yes, yes, sure. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you to Trends, first of all, for inviting me again. Actually, very nice collaboration followed up after the previous roundtable. I did an interview with Dr. Bruni here, so this kind of collaborations and networking does happen after your event. So thank you for this possibility, and this diversity of participants is of course very enriching. I hope to foster working relationships with many of you. So congratulations to Trends, keep doing this great job with your birthday. So here's my take. I approach this issue as a former high-level government official in a small country with lots of problems. So I am originally from the country of Georgia, and geographically, I always remind to my students anywhere, because you can't expect a freshman to be aware where Georgia is if you teach in North America or Canada or anywhere else. But we have interesting history, as you know, quite turbulent. It's a beautiful country with resources and at the crossroads on the Silk Road, right? And interesting neighbors. So now I'm an academic, I'm on a break from public policy and government, but I will approach the question asked by Trends from this perspective. The question being, how can think tanks be more effective in this turbulent environment? And I hope to touch on some of these themes raised here, including by Dr. Bruni. And so first, just to give a brief overview and the background, why I'm talking about my experience and a specific case, just to illustrate what I want to say, is that I started as a Deputy Minister of Defense. So that's a political appointment. And then I moved to being a lawyer for the president of Georgia, another political appointment. And then I was appointed as the body that oversees the courts, the judiciary. As a lawyer, that's my ultimate place to be and to work. And then I resigned, and now I'm in academia. I went back to academia to have some time to reflect. And this goes back to what I wanted to say. So one way think tanks can be definitely effective is by problematizing things or issues before anybody else, and primarily the government becomes aware that there is a problem. So before the people in the government construct a pattern as a problem, or somebody does it for them, be it Security Council or Ministry of Health or whoever, if you manage as a think tank to become aware that this is a problem and construct something as a problem and have a policy solution ready, you are doing perhaps 90% for your success. You are 3 months ahead of everybody in the country. And why I mean 3 months? Because once, and I'm sure probably we can discuss this based on the case of COVID-19 in all of our countries or any other public crisis, because it takes at least 3 months, that's my personal experience, if you're really, really fast, from understanding from the moment when you realize there is a problem brewing, right? It's ripening, to realizing what are its components and what are the ingredients and who makes the problem, to coming up with policy solutions that are reasonable, right? And to advocating for these solutions and to proposing them to the government, to finding the right moment when somebody, a Minister of Defense or Minister of Interior, has a moment to read your report. So if by that moment, if by the time they realize, the leadership really realizes there is a problem, and they manage to Google, an assistant to the minister manages to Google a white paper on your topic and with policy solutions, basically you are 3 months ahead of the game. And I have an example to illustrate this, kind of more of a simple one. There are many justifications why I'm saying this, primarily because people in the high level in the government, and I'm sure you know about this, we know personally from our colleagues from books, there is no time budgeted to think. So I don't remember for the last 3 or 4 years that I was in government, I had maybe an hour that was free to think. Something that is paid for in think tanks or in academia. Now that I'm in academia, I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm paid to think. That's amazing. So there, even if your brain is constantly working and you're thinking of problems, you won't have time to sit down and to contemplate whether a certain pattern is emerging, okay? So let me go to an example and then finish. So the example I have relates to threat of retaliation from ISIS and ISIS-affiliated groups that emerged when I was in government. So in Georgia is a multicultural society. We have approximately 20 to 30% of Muslims living in Georgia, quite harmoniously. Nothing ever has been a problem there. And in 2015, out of the blue, there is a viral video sent by some youngsters that claim to be affiliated with ISIS, that threaten retaliation for Georgia's pro-Western, pro-coalition position. So they threaten explosions and basically terrorist acts. The background for this is that this is out of the blue, right? We haven't heard of this problem. Never terrorism has, although Georgia politically, from the foreign policy perspective, has always had a pro-Western stance, this has never been a problem internally. And so, of course, I was in government at the time, and there was great havoc. First and primary issue, before you go to anywhere else and you find out who these people are and everything, is who is responsible? Ministry, MOD, MIA, counterintelligence, counter-terrorism service, or do we get together? If we get together, okay, it's branded as a problem, people become really afraid. That's even worse. So all of these repercussions, right? And at the time, going back to the topic of think tanks, there is no report, no knowledge in Georgia about Georgian radicalized groups. And apparently there are. So few months down the road, when everybody calms down, nothing happens, think tanks come up with proposals to find donor money, NGOs start working on the problem. We realize we have an indigenous Muslim population who has been marginalized, right? So it has been a really good fertile ground for recruitment efforts for younger people, for ISIS, okay? But this is everything in the hindsight. What would have been helpful and fantastic opportunity for any think tank, and it's a small country, so there's a justification for not having an organization that works on this. But if there was a think tank that already had been focusing on the integration problems related to Georgian Muslim population, okay? And I have ideas on how this should happen. How can we preempt construction of problems before they become problems? But we can talk about it later. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anna, and definitely we'll come back to you. Just remind me by raising your hand again to, listen to, the proposed solutions from your side. And thank you for sharing the example. This is where the think tanks come into play, to foresight what is going to happen in the future, even if you never guess that is going to happen. As you said, in a small country with, marginalized Muslim communities. We can move on to Professor Jeffrey Kaplan. The floor is yours.
Thank you. And thank you for Trends and the invitation. We are a very small institute at the Danube Institute, and we have multiple partnerships, including Trends, who are one of our partners, and we hope to go forward with joint research with them. I'd like to follow up a little bit, tell you just a very little bit about what we're doing at the Danube, but then much more, follow up on Dr. Bruni's comments on think tanks generally. We are, as I say, a very small think tank, so we have to focus as narrowly as possible, and that's a problem in the world of think tanks. So what we've essentially done is we've divided our research into two. One is the kind of thing most think tanks do, which is policy-related research, do quick studies, get them up on the web as fast as possible, and try to disseminate them as best we can. More than that, we've also formed a group that's doing much deeper research. And this is the kind of thing that crosses academia into the world of think tanks, that the larger think tanks, the Brookings of the world, are able to do. And so recently we did a major study, a year and a half worth of anti-Semitism in Hungary. Right now, we're doing an international study with multiple partners around the world on attacks on Christian communities and institutions. We'll be doing that work and the field work that goes with it in the EU, in the Middle East, and in Africa. And we're planning on following that up 2 years down the line on a study on Islamophobia, which follows exactly the same pattern, being able to maximize our partnerships to create a north-south approach. That is, to be able to have researchers from the EU teamed together with researchers from the Middle East and Africa to be able to tackle the research jointly. And that's essentially, the bare bones of what we're doing. But I think Dr. Bruni's comments are really spot on, that there is a lack of trust of think tanks. But looking at it more closely, there is a universe of think tanks. You could fill a book in multiple volumes with the number of think tanks that are out there. The ones that people come to mind when they say we don't like think tanks are the really big think tanks who are publicly associated with a particular policy approach or a particular political party or ideology or another. And all of us tend to get painted with that same brush. That's hard to avoid. And so one of the things that I think we have to think about as think tanks is we've essentially got two things that are our main business. One is the research that we do, and the other is the dissemination of that research to make it public and make it effective. In terms of the research, there is a scattergun approach, I think, that has done us no service, which is we follow the newspapers or we follow policy or whatever is the next big thing and quickly start writing studies that have no depth, no utility, and no audience. But that's something that think tanks tend to do because they think it brings funding. And I think it's a big mistake. We need both originality and depth. If you're going to publish a study, it has to be something new. It has to be something that actually says something that is important and is easily, and you're able to document it. The quality of that research has to be divorced from partisanship. It can't follow a particular policy or what a particular government or your funders want, and that can be very difficult to do. That's kind of a dance at times. And most important, I think, of all, the foundation of it all is what I tell my researchers, which is follow the data. You don't predetermine the outcome. You don't say, this is what we support, and so let's find all of the material we can that supports it, and then we'll publish it and call it factual. It's simply not, and it's not going to stand the test of time. The dissemination part is extremely important because you have some new piece of research and it's really good. But if nobody hears it, it's like a tree falling in the forest. It has to be out there and in a way that's accessible and trustworthy. So there are multiple audiences to be addressed, and to do that, you need multiple platforms. Things that are traditional print, for example. To have your own in-house journal is important. If not, to be able to publish your things regularly and to have books. Books, by the way, that are not done as we do in the EU, unfortunately, which is you write the book, you pay a publisher to publish it, and then it sits in the office until you can give it away. It really has to be something that has enough value that a real publishing house wants to publish and disseminate it. So it's not coming from your little think tank or your big think tank. It's coming from a reputable publisher, and therefore it's going to get a reputable audience. The internet, obviously, you have to keep feeding your own website, and this becomes a monster that we're all trying to feed because things on a website have a very short shelf life. So there's a lot of pressure on your researchers to keep producing things, which often devolve into undergraduate level class papers, to get up on the website, and they quickly go, and you have a small readership who watches it, mainly their friends and family, to be honest, and it comes and goes, but it doesn't have an impact. You've got to have something that will have an impact. I think that we have to be creative with our media, which is we're not just putting stuff on the website. We're doing things in streaming video. We're creating conferences and real flesh and blood get-togethers that will not only impact the area where we are based, but will go out to a wider international audience with people who actually want to see it and to spread the ideas. For example, as small as we are, on Monday and Tuesday, we just completed an international conference on attacks on Christian communities and institutions, which, to the absolute amazement of the Hungarian media, had Muslims and people from Muslim institutions. We had somebody from ISESCO, the Islamic Cultural and Scientific Organization. We had somebody from the Moroccan Observatory. And together, it created a much greater impact than if we were, to use the Americanism, preaching to the choir. And so the media inquiries I'm getting are as centered on that A, yes, there are Christians in the Middle East, and B, the Muslims are not always attacking them, was a great surprise, and something that the Hungarians were actually quite open to. Nobody had ever done it before. But it created a public controversy in a positive way. Beyond this public dissemination, we also are in the policy business. And so we need to be able to have ways to conduct our research to traditional media and to government institutions. And this can be difficult because governments often don't want to hear anything that they don't already believe. They want you to support whatever their policy is. So you've got to establish that position of trust so that they can do it, so that you have the space in whatever kind of country, whatever your government system is, to be able to go in there and speak openly and freely and say, no, maybe this policy should be re-examined. Or maybe you're missing something when you're in an examination of terrorism, which is my specialty, or of foreign policy. You have to be able to do that. And to do that, you have to establish a reputation for honesty, fairness, and depth and quality of your research. Something we've heard a lot here, and we're doing a lot of at the Danube Institute. We're very small, and some of you are also very small. And so we need to be able to establish not only MOUs, memorandums of understanding, which connect us to other research agencies, research centers, which we do, but to be able to conduct joint research with them and actually produce material so that you are able to put together what resources you have with what resources others have to create something that you're not individual, that you simply don't have the capability of doing yourself. You don't have enough researchers, you don't have enough time, you don't have a lot of the material things that you need. Finally, I think Dr. Hanna was exactly right. The most successful of us are those who are ahead of the curve. People who have already identified a problem before it happens. And therefore, you're not competing with 1,000 other research institutes following the headlines. You've actually created for yourself an area of expertise that government and media and the public will go to ask you questions, to be able to feed the narrative and to help to create the narrative. And to do that, again, you must follow the data. You cannot be identified with a particular party, group, ideology. You really have to have that public perception of independence. But anyway, that's my take. I'll be quiet now. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Jeffrey. Such an amazing talk. Honestly, I don't know if I can add anything to it, and I'm really interested to hear other participants, their take on your talk. I also, I was really interested in your comment about, gaining the trust of the government. How to do that? What are the ways to do that? How to, I would really like to hear the participants' ideas on that. So maybe we can move now to Dr. Paul McAllister.
Well, I think it's good morning still. I'm in San Francisco, California at the moment, and I know many of you are in various parts of the world. I'm sort of confused about what time it is because I just came back from Bali. And I reside in Charlotte, North Carolina, and quite frankly, I'm operating with very little sleep and jet lag. So I'm happy to be here in spite of the fact that I have to use an iPhone rather than my Apple computer, since that's somehow got damaged in the middle of the trip. But it's good to listen to what so many of you have said. And quite frankly, I'm inspired by listening to you. Let me speak very briefly to the idea of optimizing potential for policy intervention. There are many things that I think we can all agree upon, but we are certainly in the midst of a crisis globally that requires someone to be an arbitrator of what is in the best interest of the people. And I heard someone speak to the notion of the common good. When I was in Bali, one of the first sessions that I participated in, involved this idea of utopia. And this was something that was put forth by the German Institute of Development and Sustainability, used to be called the German Institute of I think it was DIE, those are the initials. But in any case, IDOS, the German Institute of Development and Sustainability, they have a team there that looked at the question of the future and what is meant by utopia. And they defined a futures cone, where you look at a problem from its inception or the current state and idealize about a future state and what it might be. And some of the ideas that we jotted down ranged from things that were considered to be preposterous or possible, those things that we thought might be plausible or even preferable, and use that information as a way of galvanizing inputs from all of those who participated in the working groups to define what is seemingly most probable. And there is where I want to hang my hat in terms of what is probable, what is likely. Because when we think about strategizing and building strategies to transition from research to practice, stakeholders want to know what is most likely to happen, as it has already been stated, or what is most probable. And in order to translate research into practice, it is extremely important from my perspective to be able to galvanize as many stakeholders as possible, not just merely those in the think tank community, although that is extremely important for us, but those in our local communities, those who are even migrating to the country, let's say. It's very important to talk to people who work in different arenas of life, be it corporate America or in government, or persons who are even looking for jobs, who may have suffered some loss as a result, for example, of COVID and the pandemic and all of the transitions that were involved there. What we've learned at GLUE is that people of all walks of life have an enormous degree of insight and value. And when all of that is brought together and harnessed in a way that is supported by the data that is published, sometimes it leads to the need to create more information than what has been written about. So often, those of us who write and those of us who publish tend to focus on those communities that can fund us. And therefore, we tend to write in such a way that helps us please and satisfy those for whom we are most obligated and most beholden. So I think it's important to be able to learn to listen to voices that are often muted, voices that do have a tremendous wealth of insight and information to share. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. Just a few weeks ago, I was part of a delegation that went to the US-Mexico border. It was my first time at the border. In a few weeks, we'll be heading over to Palestine on a similar observation or field experience to talk to the people in terms of what they encounter as a result of the various circumstances that are faced there. And when we get back, the goal is to compare what we have actually seen with our eyes with the literature that has been written, what has been published, and try to figure out where the gaps are. What are the gaps in terms of what is not being shared, what is not being written about, what has been overlooked, what has been forgotten, who has been forgotten, and then begin to ask ourselves why that is the case and what our role might be in helping to be more persuasive of policy leaders and thinking more humanely about these issues. We don't have a cookie cutter model that we're trying to follow. We're simply being led by our nose, as the old Fruit Loops commercial used to say, follow your nose. And some would say, follow the data. But I would look at it from the perspective of what are the needs within the human family. That is the most important thing to me. I speak as one who spent 25 years not only working in the federal government and also Fortune 100 companies as a program manager in engineering capacities, but also as a minister. And so as one who is seeking to bring an answer to this question of faith and trust, many institutions are falling apart and collapsing because of a lack of trust. It's not just think tanks. We are not isolated from the rest of the world. And so it's important when we talk about optimizing potential for policy intervention to realize that not only are we in a fragmented society, but our polity is fragmented, our politics is fragmented, and therefore many of our organizations and the thinking that goes into them is also quite substandard. And so the purpose of global leaders in unity and evolvement, or GLUE, is to synthesize what is best in our society. And so rather than taking a somewhat pessimistic approach, which I can understand we might do, GLUE seeks to model what we did in the side event at the T20 on Monday morning, and look at the future from the standpoint of what's possible, what's probable, and even what is preposterous, and use all of that information as a way of targeting a future state that is most probable, and then building as many stakeholders around that vision, and then working as feverishly and intelligently as we possibly can. That does mean field experiences. It does mean enormous data mining, and sometimes we feel overwhelmed. I certainly feel overwhelmed. I have a cadre of interns, as well as those of greater experiences such as I. And we try to bring all of these individuals into the same spaces and see what we feel we are most capable of accomplishing, and what we feel we can't. Then we look for partners in other think tanks, other organizations, other civil society groups to see where those gaps can be filled. I'm very confident that when we look at optimizing our potential for policy intervention, I think many of our politicians need us, and they want us because they realize they've run out of answers. And I could do a little name dropping, but I would say it's important to know that when you have politicians in your family who you feel are modeling the best of what our society should be about, then that makes it a little bit easier to feel that there is an openness. And even though there are many who perhaps have shut the door on new ideas and new ways of thinking, and certainly non-traditional approaches, I think when you bring young people into the spaces that we're talking about, that infuses a different type of life, a different type of lived experience, a different type of expectation, a new energy, and a new aspiration to keep on keeping on, as sometimes I've heard old folks say in churches, to strive and thrive and pursue those outer boundaries that sometimes we fail to recognize. And this is the engineer in me speaking. You take what we have and you apply it to the problem, and you develop new tools as necessary in order to reach those end goals that we are talking about. And so utopias are possible, even if they have to be achieved in micro levels. This is what my organization, GLUE, aspires to do. And I'll say this very quickly, and then I will stop talking. I founded GLUE several years ago because I realized that much of my preaching in churches was over the heads of my constituents. And I could not understand quite why. And that was because when you begin to move beyond just one frame of reference and begin to try to integrate the different concepts and ideas that come from the sciences and the health industry and the religious field and different fields of endeavor, there's something that's happening in the human mind that limits our capacity to be able to handle that. And so I felt it was necessary to start something new in order to be able to close those gaps. I hope that answers some of the question. If not, maybe others can take it from here.
Thank you, Dr. Paul, and I really thank you for highlighting, the importance of humanity in this field as well. We can move on to Mr. Ubaid Al-Zaabi, who is an old colleague, and I'm really happy to see him here with us today. You can go ahead and comment. Thank you so much. Mr. Ubaid, you are on mute.
Sorry. How about now? Okay, sorry. First of all, I would like, on behalf of the administration of the Emirates Center for Strategic Studies and Research, I would like to thank Trends Center for their invitation, and I would like to congratulate you on your anniversary. Listening to the comments of some of the participants got me to reach a conclusion that for think tanks, for the outcomes of the think tanks to be effective or enhancing the role of the think tanks is depend on three pillars. The first pillar is the think tanks themselves. The second one is the governmental entities. And the third pillar is, as one of the participants mentioned, Mr. Daniel before, the private sector or the commercial sector. So without these three pillars working together, we cannot promote or emphasize or enhance the work of think tanks. And as Dr. Anna said before, she talked about 3 months for some of the outcomes of think tanks to reach or to be put into action. I think this time is this is my personal opinion. I think 3 months is a long time to deal with some issues. However, if we already have an established connection with our stakeholders from the governmental entities and from the private sectors, we could shorten that time. This is my conclusion, as I mentioned. And talking about this, thank God here in the UAE, we are gifted with a leadership who saw this connection or this relationship between the think tanks and the governmental entities as an important factor very early comparing to the age of the United Arab Emirates. And we could saw that in the establishment of the Emirates Center for Strategic Studies and Research, which was established in 1994, after only around 23 years after the establishment or the foundation of the United Arab Emirates. So this is my brief intervention regarding to the subject.
Thank you, Mr. Ubaid. And thank you for summarizing, the thoughts of yourself, of course, and the ECSSR and other participants into, very short and coherent ideas. We can move on to Nermina Gasimova. The floor is yours. Nermina, I believe she's not here. I can move on to Dr. Jessica.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm here.
Oh. Okay. Back to Nermina.
It's a technical issue. So firstly, I would like to thank you for inviting me to this roundtable. I believe that it is very beneficial for us because I will have an opportunity to share with our perspective. So our think tank, that is Center for Economic and Social Development, is located in Baku, Azerbaijan, and is operating from 2006. Mostly we provide insight to the macroeconomics and social policies, and referring to the topics about the governmental policies and its impact, I would like to give you brief insight, because in Azerbaijan, it is, let's say, almost impossible to operate without the governmental allowance. So before you want to implement a particular project or something, if you receive the grant, it firstly has to proceed throughout the government and just simply, to pass their loans. So this cooperation between think tanks and governments is especially reflected in our country. So you have to keep the balance, because it is almost impossible to do something without them. But at the same time, you have to keep, this balance in order not to upset them at the same point. So it's sometimes it becomes really challenging. I believe some of you will understand that. Also, what we find extremely important on our behalf is the expanded links and networks, because there is a lot to do with the development of think tanks in Azerbaijan. So if to speak about the level of trust in our country, think tanks are not popular in Azerbaijan at all. So if you speak about the level of trust, or to what extent the society, prefer to listen to our opinion or to our voice, it's almost on 0%, because think tanks are not quite a popular, although they do quite a nice job in terms of rural development and stuff, because it's just my personal observation. For example, our local partner think tanks, they mostly operate on the rural level, because they implement some projects reflected on the development of the rural areas and stuff. But if to speak about overall, they are absolutely not so popular. And we do have our media, we do post the stuff on our websites and articles and research and small, just small research. But the observation that I have, the majority of the viewers are from foreign countries, which is some sort of, it creates in my mind, I don't know how to say. It's strange, because at some point you try to provide the insight for the local people, just, to share the opinion, to give another perspective, but you see that people don't want to hear it. Either it is at some point correlated with the level of trust or with unpopularity of think tanks. But in general, I think that in our country and in countries that are like us, there is a lot to do in terms of development. So in this regard, if to refer to the topic of how transit the policies to actions, I believe that the first and important thing is that we have to gain foreign experience in terms of think tank operation. It means that maybe creating some sort of networking link may be beneficial at some point. So one of the recent examples is that we are closely cooperating with the Carrick Institute, which is the Central Asia Regional Economic Cooperation, the body supported by the Asian Development Bank. So it gave us an opportunity to connect with the regional think tanks that are located mostly in Southern Caucasus. And we also see these benefits from this cooperation, because at some point we had an opportunity to expand our links. We can create some multi-regional projects and stuff. But again, it makes no sense if you don't have the trust and if you don't have the audience that will listen to you. So I believe that for us, the thing of creating or increasing the level of trust is the first and foremost thing before we can refer to the questions of how to transit policies into actions. So thank you for your attention. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nermina. And it is actually very unfortunate that think tanks are not that popular in Azerbaijan. But maybe, we could, other think tanks in the world could maybe, and the participants here could raise some solutions on how to fix this problem. Let's move to Dr. Jessica.
Hello. Thank you first for inviting me. This is my first time in this space, and it's very exciting. Actually, I've only been at the Al-Qasimi Foundation for the last 5 months, 5.5 months. So I'm a newbie to this circle in many ways. But I would like to make a couple of observations about at least how we do things at the Al-Qasimi Foundation. And maybe this will speak to some of you. Narmina, hopefully maybe this would help you as well. So thinking about sort of objectivity, optimizing impact, and gaining trust in the government as well as the local population. I think that the Al-Qasimi Foundation has really positioned itself sort of at the nexus between the local and the international. So between the macro and the micro levels. And let me explain that a little bit. So we definitely, for our research, our connections, we are looking outward. We're looking internationally, bringing in international experts, conducting research, publishing in journals, edited volumes, things like that. So really sort of looking outward that way, but also taking all of that expertise that we're collecting in-house as well as with our partners, and also thinking about how we can really optimize our impact locally. And I think that this has sort of been sort of where we situate ourselves is I think it's definitely the way that we have built trust over time, and we're going on, we've just turned 12 years now, so we'll be going into our 13th year next year, and so over time we're kind of a stop for people to come at sort of the local levels and even the regional levels to come to us because we have those connections to sort of the broader international community as well. So I don't know if that makes sense or even speaks to you, Narmina or other colleagues, but those have been my observations in the last few months. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Jessica, for proposing these ideas, and I hope Narmina could also benefit from them. Let's move on to Professor Ahmed Evan.
Thank you.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Because for reasons that I do not quite understand, I'm getting an echo, and also I have two names there. So if I can possibly get one of them out.
Yeah, maybe we can remove the other one.
I'm afraid to remove it myself. I don't know how it got there.
No, we'll do it. Yeah, the one. Yes. No. Mute. Okay, maybe you can try now.
Yes, is it all right now?
Oh, so much better. Yeah,
no,
I think
I'm
it's so
still
much
getting. I think one of these has to go.
Okay, we'll remove the other account. Can you try now?
Let me try now. I don't.
Yeah, now it sounds really good.
Let me see. It may sound very good, but I do not see anyone except you. So that is also very, very strange how this could possibly happen. But let me say a few things and then try to come in again. Thank you. This is the second time I'm joining you in this annual meeting. It's a great pleasure to be here. let me briefly say three things. One is to introduce Istanbul Policy Center at Sabancı University, how that came about, because it's a little different. And then some general observations about think tanks that I think we have heard of very incisive ideas, but I'll briefly add a point or two. And then what think tanks can also do in terms of complex issues. What is it? Sabancı University is a new university. It was chartered in 1997 and took first students in 1999. I was the founding dean of social sciences, and I thought that there was some facility and some possibility needed for future graduate students of ours to be able to work in an applied research center. And that is the origin of Istanbul Policy Center. Applied research, particularly at that time, good old days, there was a real interest, also a great deal of public support, well over 70% of Turkey joining the EU. So the policy research really started with EU studies established at Sabancı University. The continuation of that was a cooperation which is still going on with a major German foundation working on Turkey-EU relations, particularly Turkey-Germany relations, and also this particular foundation, Stiftung Mercator, is also interested in energy and climate that we are pursuing. In addition, we added conflict management as well as mediation and urbanization, which is certainly, if you think of Istanbul, you think of urbanization and the need to address that issue. So that is the background of Istanbul Policy Center. And what it does actually is to disseminate research. As was mentioned, there is real research going on, and it offers possibility for graduate students to do quantitative research on issues on which they would write their master's and particularly PhD theses. Now, in terms of what think tanks generally do, the point that I would want to add is that they also have a responsibility to inform the public, to provide accurate information to the public and disseminate knowledge and their analyses to the public in a way that the popular imagination can benefit from that. So it's, in fact, one aspect of it is popularizing research. The most important, of course, the regular job of think tanks, and of course, a place like a university-based center, is also offering policy proposals. And offering policy proposals is a situation that differs from one culture to the other. This is done without any, with great familiarity and very smoothly in pluralistic cultures, that different think tanks would offer different types of research, types of conclusions, but in full understanding that they are not advocating one kind of approach, but they're offering a series of policy proposals on a given topic based on credible research. In hierarchical societies, my observation has been that there is a tendency on the part of think tanks not to go too far, not to take a radically different approach from the generally accepted ideas. So that is, and I should not name, but if you can imagine the difference between Anglo-Saxon and Central European societies, you have basically some idea of this difference. The problem, of course, of advocacy on an ideological basis goes hand in hand with societies that do not have a democratic vision or possibility, and that is a great problem. Now, my last point there is what else can think tanks do? I would like to add one point to that, and that is how do research-based think tanks, particularly university-based think tanks or university centers, how can they approach complex issues? By complex issues, I really mean that issues that have two or more independent variables. We are facing one major issue in the north of the Black Sea. We are also facing similarly complex issues such as the Eastern Mediterranean and other parts of the world. How do you approach these? Now, this is before something can be formulated to offer, even as a possibility of remote policy suggestion. I think the best way would be to use the good old-fashioned way of working on scenarios. And scenarios are concrete examples, and differing scenarios might yield some clues, but it is not very easy to come up with one idea, one or two policy suggestions, and expect that they would work in the case of these complex problems. Let me stop here. If there are any further points of discussion, disagreement, questions, and so on, I'd be very happy to return to these. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Ahmed, for your great talk and explaining the whole dilemma and the challenges that we face in the global think tank, the field of global think tanks. We can move on now to Vilena Chakarova to hear what she has.
Hello, and congratulations to the organizers of this event. It's a great pleasure to meet such a diverse group. I'm extremely delighted to be part of it and to learn from your experiences and also from your stories. The Austrian Institute for European and Security Policy is based in Vienna and is led by the former defense minister Werner Fassamt, in fact, the longest serving defense minister in Austria between 1990 and 2000, which also reveals already the area of expertise that we have, which mainly covers the European foreign security and defense policy. Now, we are a very small think tank with a very clear and explicit niche that we cover in all relations with partners and also in our external relations with third institutes outside of the European Union. So as you can guess, the one main area that we cover is, of course, the one between the 27 members, specifically, of course, when it comes to the European Union instruments and policies regarding the direct neighborhood to the east. And we have some colleagues from the so-called European neighborhood, namely from Georgia and Azerbaijan, but also, of course, the southern neighborhood. So everything that surrounds the European Union. But of course, the main topics are geopolitics, geoeconomics, and war. The main questions of peace and war. And that is also the reason that our main contractor, actually partner, is the Federal Ministry of Defense. But also we have smaller cooperation partnerships with the Foreign Ministry and with the Chancellery. So to cover the main areas that have been already addressed by other colleagues, we very much depend on governmental funding. And in fact, if I look back to the last 14 years of working in the area of think tanks, specifically in this think tank, we have worked with 4 different defense ministers from 4 different political parties, which also points to another important issue that was already addressed. So I really don't want to repeat the experience that has been already actually highlighted. But indeed, without governmental spending, we will not be able to exist. Then again, of course, given the fact that we are operating in such a sensitive area, we are absolutely unbiased. That means that how do we provide for an unbiased, of course, policy consulting and research? Our board basically consists of former party members from all parties in Austria. That is the way how we guarantee that we have a transparency about the activities of the institute. That means that the whole board is consisting. I'm also a board member as the operative director, but all other board members are basically representing all party forces in the country. Now, when it comes to the policy work, the policy consulting work, of course, here the way we see ourselves is basically being positioned at the input side of this complex, huge and often intransparent political box, right? We try to provide policy recommendations when it comes to strategic questions. Just to give you one, I don't want to keep it too long, but to give you one example, right now we have a situation where two neutral countries, namely Finland and Sweden, will be joining NATO, probably by the end of this year. But in fact, Austria joined together with Sweden and Finland the European Union in 1995. So that means, of course, that we try also to steer political debate within the society on the one side. This is the one major task we see in our function as a think tank, creating awareness, contributing to the political awareness of our society when it comes to sensitive security and defense related issues. But then on the other side, to also exercise pressure on our government and on our political decision makers to take certain steps or to launch certain positions. Right now, for instance, we don't have a position on neutrality. Our government tries to actually more or less well, put the whole debate under the rug, so to say, in order to not open a Pandora box. Okay, so we are one of the few actors in the country right now that tries to open up this box. Then, of course, it was mentioned already, research is critical, academic, and also non-academic. So we have both. The whole team is actually pursuing further academic career. We are facilitated with academic institutions in one way or another. We have also very often universities as partners in our projects, but we also have non-academic, classic think tank we are pursuing that kind of non-academic career next to the academic one, where we try to basically do what political consultants do by participating also in other institutes and partners projects. So, of course, that is the way we can also survive in this very volatile environment. The third important of course, dimension that is at least critical for us is a very small think tank that is also actually an NGO. That means we are 200% dependent on tax money. We don't have revenues and we don't generate revenues. When we conduct events, our events are free and are available to everyone. But of course, one way how we can make it possible is also by participating in international consortia. So the one way, obviously, as being based in a European Union country, is through various participations in Horizon projects and in other research programs, together with universities and together with international partners. And of course, we also pursue that kind of partnerships, like the ones with Trends. We are a young partner of Trends since last year. We are very thankful for this exchange, because we also conduct particular topic-based studies, depending also on points of intersection. To give you two examples, we've conducted, for instance, we waited for Brexit to happen to be a little bit funny at the end of my short presentation, but in fact, we launched a cooperation with United Kingdom following Brexit, based on two studies that we conducted on Central and Eastern Europe, because from Austria's position, Central Eastern Europe is the direct neighborhood, and then, of course, Western Balkans being the second one, and Eastern Europe the third one, and then, of course, Middle East, obviously, the next immediate one. So to conclude, we are very much incorporated in the inner workings of our government. Let me give you two examples. One is that we produced an internal paper on which was called an input on possible China strategy for the Austrian government, whether it's going to be this government or the next one. This this is irrelevant, but it's an important strategic paper that can be used. A second important example for you, we are also incorporated into the strategic foresight process of the Defense Ministry. So what we do also through strategic foresight is to provide scenario monitoring, trends analysis, and we produce reports twice per year for the Defense Ministry, while covering the European foreign security and defense policy, the European neighborhood, and also the political integration. And I would stop here. Thank you very much once again for sharing all these relevant and important experiences. I learned a lot, and I look forward to more exchange with all of you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Velena, and thank you for sharing your experience. It's truly inspiring. Let's move on now to Daniel Superville, all the way from Uruguay.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Trends, for inviting me and my think tank to participate in this meeting. I will be short because you've been saying very interesting things about Ceres. Ceres is a think tank, the most important think tank in Uruguay. It has partners that are from the private sector. We don't have funds from the government. And our mission is to contribute to lift the quality of the debate in my country. You must know that my country, Uruguay, actually is the strongest and most stable country in Latin America. And luckily, it's a kind of a little bit messy actually these days. So we are trying to push this issue internationally also. That's why we've made so many agreements with different think tanks around the world so as to permit the world to get inside Uruguay. Uruguay is a small country between Argentina and Brazil, not small in territory, but small compared to these two countries. Two things, the things that our think tank has done in the last 2 years. For example, Uruguay is negotiating a free trade agreement with China. That is a very important issue for the region, not only for my country. The government that was before this government started the deal with China. This government continued the deal with China. But in the meantime, there was the war in Ukraine and the link between Moscow and Peking. So that changed the way things were handled. And that's where the think tank gets inside, telling or suggesting the scenarios the professor told that might happen once there's a game changer as the invasion of Ukraine. So it is our chance to have a voice in the public debate of Uruguay, suggesting that, hey, this has changed, you must take care of this or that, and to improve the kind of the debate regarding this very, very important issue as it is the negotiation of a free trade agreement with China, being a small country with the giant of Asia. No? So that is what we're doing. That is the credibility we have to put these topics on the agenda and people to discuss in a way maybe the government can't discuss, neither the political parties, because they all agree to go on a free trade agreement with China. So that is what we are doing actually. You know, we have a voice that puts this on the agenda. And the other thing we've done in the last years, you know, in Latin America, recently, we have a kind of division between good and bad, evil and what they call here the rift or the fissure. No, you are either on this side or on this other side. And this think tank I'm working in tries to build bridges between the different parts, and that is very important because once you know you can have a conversation, you can have a dialogue, you can have things together. It is much easier to contribute to the democracy of my country, to the republic of my country. So we've been doing during the pandemic and during the last years, trying to go and speak with the unions, with the right political party, with the central political party, with the left, with everybody, and trying to find the points we have in common. Because what is our mission? Our mission is to improve the quality of the debate in Uruguay so as to influence on public policies so as to make better the life of Uruguayans, you know? So that is what we are doing. We have young economists working with us. We have 3 journalists, we have an anthropologist, and we continuously are putting on the agenda topics that are interesting to discuss on crucial issues of our country. The externalization of our country, the free trade agreement with China, what's happening with the crypto, all the issues that are on the top of mind of the world, we are trying to discuss it and to put it down to earth in my country. And that's what we do. And that's why I think it's very important for the think tanks to have a very active participation in the public life of countries. It is in my country, it is very important for something that doesn't belong to the government, that doesn't belong to the political parties, that doesn't belong to a businessman or to a company. We are just independent, and that is our aim and our goal and what we are doing, and we are very happy what we're doing. And the relationship we have done with Trends, it is partly because we decided to open to the world. We made deals with nearly 36 think tanks around the 5 continents, so as to make exchange and to let the people outside Uruguay know there's a little country between Argentina and Brazil doing things correctly and wanting to grow either economically and socially. So that is the role of our think tank, and I'm very pleased and honored to be in this panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Daniel. And I'm really glad to hear that you include the youth in your work as well. That's what we do here at Trends. Let me follow with Mr. Saddam Zarjahan. So we could follow maybe on speaking about the youth. He is the CEO of the International Youth Council headquarters. Mr. Saddam, you can go ahead.
Hi, am I audible? Am I?
Yeah.
Right, perfect. So, sorry, I joined all very late. First of all, thank you, Trends, for organizing this event and involving IYC for this event. And we were working since 2019. Let me explain. Since the time is very limited, can give a quick example how when you put research into action, how it could transform the world. IYC is one of the best examples. United Nations, since 2004, they used to organize annual youth assemblies. So they gather youth participants around the UN member countries, but there's no follow-up mechanism. Once they come up with a mandate, once they come up with an action plan, there is no proper guidelines given by UN for the member countries to implement. So that's the reason young people, they felt there's a gap. They identify International Youth Council. They started International Youth Council, which is a completely independent body from the UN, but we follow UN mandates, we follow UN guidelines to implement projects. But we are not think tank, to be honest. We work with the think tanks, just like Friends in other countries as well. We get their research, we get their policies, we help the government, we help the youth member countries and youth-led organizations to develop policies and build institutional capacities, and also by advocating inclusive and sustainable youth development to achieve United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So therefore, I invite all of you to join us and support us to give your feedback, give your researchers to build projects based on that. We can work with the government. We can also work with you, with other youth-led organizations. That's all from my end to present.
Thank you, Mr. Saddam. I totally agree with you, and thank you for sharing the work of your entity. We have a final participant, Dr. Iyad Dajani. This is his third year joining and participating in our roundtable. It's truly an honor. Dr. Iyad, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for actually having me, and thank Trends and everyone who has part with us. This is my third year actually here with you, and we are happy to partner with Trends. Actually, I am the research director for the Academic Alliance for Reconciliation in the Middle East and North Africa. We are based in Germany under Friedrich Schiller University, and we develop and come to youth as well. So we are kind of a center, but not center, an alliance of Arab universities that want to work on developing reconciliation process in within the country itself. So how we develop change of policies is that ministries bring their employees to us, and we work on developing them and understanding what is reconciliation process in the middle of conflict. And we develop actually working on master programs development in higher education institutions, like different Arab countries and different universities. And then we bring the professors, we develop the capacity building for them, and we develop workshops, and we have symposiums that we develop within 3 years now. We have 3 published books, and Trends are in many of them actually, and they were in the last symposium that we created in Vienna in this August. We had exactly 75 participants, 35 from Arab countries, professors, students from PhD programs, everyone working in reconciliation as a transdisciplinary research. So we don't work, we created it as a science, and actually we are not funded. We are looking for funding, and we create funding for us by writing proposal for the EU, as we are part of the EU, and they fund us as part of developing peace studies in the middle of conflicts, and we develop it as a science. And we more concentrate on reconciliation process in the middle of conflict, where we work in studying other reconciliation processes like South Africa, Colombia, German reconciliation with the Jewish people, German reconciliation with the French, German reconciliation with different countries, and also we go back to Korea, North and South. And then the people who are working with, either we develop the master program at their universities, they become part of Armenia, and we develop and then we try to get accreditation. We are the only people in the Arab world that have accreditation from higher education institutions in master reconciliation studies. And we do it in the context of the country itself. For example, we have Qataris, we have also Saudi Arabians, we have from Iraq, we have from Lebanon, we have from Palestine, we have from Jordan, we have from Egypt, Morocco, Libya, Mauritania even wanted to work, Algeria, Aljazair. Simply, they bring their students work on in those ministries. And they have an agenda to understand how the reconciliation process happened in Europe. And how can it be implemented and what's good about it. But then we go back and we bring professors, higher education institutions, people, builders. And we infiltrate those, we teach them what is reconciliation process and how it can help them in higher education institution to develop as a master program in those institutions. Then those people become the policy changers. The policy changes of their own community in their own education. I understand also, like I have people who work in governments, the Arab governments, that are really understanding how reconciliation process is working, and they want to implement it in their own government, in their education. And some of them are in schools in Jordan that they want to make it in the higher education institution now in Arab universities, that master programs in reconciliation and peace studies is a really degree. It's not just a course you take and you go home. No, it's a degree. And then there are something new that happened, that they wanted to develop centers. We have now like a lot of application that tells us we want to develop this center for reconciliation processes and studies for our people, like a reconciliation center process. We have an application from Jordan, we have applications from Egypt, we have applications that they want to understand how this can develop and become a science to them, and how can they implement it in their own community. So we work in developing oneself, in developing the community, and we feel that those are the people of the policy changers. I tell you, I'm working with all government people, they bring their employees, and we offer a PhD. We have now an accredited PhD program in reconciliation, conflict transformation, and peace education from a higher education institution in Germany. And the master students, when he finishes his master's in those Arab countries, is connected to a PhD program. So he can continue his education in Germany, doing his PhD. At the same time, he's also teaching at the Arab University his master program development. So this is a capacity building project as well as a development project, more into the future of the process of reconciliation. So this is actually Trends was part of us, where we develop also symposiums. And the symposium, we develop publications, and we bring them every 2 years, all the professors that are working in each country and how it evolved in their country, and they discuss it with the other interacting parts. And the only issue that I want to emphasize that what we do, we don't teach them reconciliation. They study reconciliation, research reconciliation as a transdisciplinary approach, and then they think how it can be implemented in their context. We have people from the Qatar government that are doing I don't want to speak more, but it's like I have a very important people who are part of the government, want a PhD in reconciliation and peace studies to know how they implement it for hate speech, for example. I have people from the government of Lebanon doing their PhD to understand how, for example, the Ta'if agreement can be changed into reconciliation process between each other. I have people from doing their PhD between the Coptics and the Muslims. I have another student, PhD from Morocco, that is doing about the problem between the Moroccans and the Sahara, and the Algerians and the Americans and the Russians, how reconciliation process can solve those issues. This is part of the policies, and I thank Trends so much for being here, and I'm honored to be with you all. And really, I think Trends and think tanks can play a very big role in implementing our policy. We don't have any policy. We're not supported by any government. We don't do politics. This is but we want to help. Think tanks can be like one of our pillars to develop this, and we want to work more with Trends in developing, like, for example, a next symposium for reconciliation. I see that Trends can play a very big role in developing reconciliation in the Arab world and be the beacon for that. And this is what I think. And that's why where think tanks plays a role in changing the policies, when they support such policy that want the people who want change and can develop a transformation for it. And I thank Trends very much. I don't want to take more out of your time, and I really honored to meet you all actually. And let's hope for reconciliation process. I've been working for it for 13 years, and I hope it someday it flourish. I can just share with one last thing, as I see people from radical places transforming into developing reconciliation. This, I saw it in my own experience. So there is a hope for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Iyad. Truly inspiring work. And as partners, we hope to continue the good work with you. We come to the end of today's event and third annual roundtable. I'm really happy and I'm thankful to all the participants here today. On behalf of Dr. Mohammed Al-Ali, CEO of Trends Research and Advisory, and myself, Sumaya Al-Hadrami, Deputy Chief Global Officer, I wish you a good day and a good night from wherever you are right now. And hopefully we can see you in the fourth year. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you so much,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.